Again, this remains to be seen how it's all going to play out, but it could be an interesting race.
Let's do a little inside scoop segment with FT Senior Insider Ken Rosenthal. Good to see you, Ken, and make sure everyone checks out Fair Territory, which was back yesterday with Ken. Great job from the fill-ins last week. But Ken, I want to start with some pretty legit news that we actually didn't get to yet. We saved it for you right at the top. The ultimate change of scenery story. Victor Robles goes from the Nationals to the Mariners, and now he's a little bit rich with this extension for almost $10 million. What do you think?
Well, Scott, as I wrote today, I cannot remember a player getting DFA'd and released and then going to a new team and signing an extension less than 3 months later. It's kind of a remarkable story. And obviously, it speaks well to Robles and it speaks well for the Mariners, not so well for the Nationals. And there clearly was some kind of disconnect there. I'm told that Robles fell out of favor with Davey Martinez, the manager. And it's just so odd to me that he can move from one team to the other and look so energized, so happy, play so well when he really hadn't done that in a while for the Nationals. This was once a top 5 prospect in the game in 2018, significant contributor to the 2019 Nationals World Series Championship club, and yet it just didn't work out there, and it worked out nicely for him in Seattle. They feel that with his speed and defense that he's got a very high floor, and if he hits, even better.
Yeah, it's a crazy story. I mean, I've been following it. He kind of saved them for a little time period before they made those moves, too, for Randy Arozarena and Justin Turner. And can I remember in the Arizona Fall League years back when I used to call some of those games, one of the, I think, opens we did to the game was like, Robles or Acuna? Who's going to have the better career? And then for years, you're like, what is this? So my next question for you on the Seattle side is, yes, they like him. Why now? Is it because he's a free agent and now they can kind of solidify an outfield of the future for the next few years?
That's exactly it. And the way it was described to me by Justin Hollander, their GM, they saw the free agent class and looked at it and said, you know what? We do this guy right now. It's probably a better deal at a better value than we can get for any other outfielder that might be out there. Now, that remains to be seen. And it remains to be seen whether the Mariners acted too rashly after seeing 46 games or whatever it's been for Victor Robles. But at the same time, it's a move that is kind of preemptive in the sense that now they don't have to go out and get an outfielder in the market. They can come back next year with Rodriguez, Robles, and Arozarena as well, and that's a pretty formidable group.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I like it. I like it a lot. Mariners offense definitely looking better since the trade deadline. We'll see if that continues here. Okay, I'll take you to a news story that hits from the weekend and then carries into yesterday. Jarren Duran with a homophobic slur that he yelled to a fan. It was caught on video, of course, from Sunday. And then he's apologized multiple times since. He's suspended 2 games. What were your thoughts and any insight on the incident?
My thoughts were that the punishment was appropriate, that we have seen this kind of thing before in baseball, and that's approximately what the punishment has been in the past for Kevin Pillar, for some others as well. And what encouraged me about the aftermath of this was not so much Duran's apology, though it was good, but the Red Sox forcefulness in saying, we can't have this. We want to be inclusive. We want our park to be welcoming to all fans of all kinds. And this is not something that we're going to tolerate. And you look at this and you say, okay, well, these things happen, right? Heat of the moment. Some fans are going to look at it that way. Why are we reacting like this? Well, here's why we're reacting like this, or why the Red Sox reacted and should react like the way they have. There are certain terms that to certain members of certain groups are highly offensive and hurtful. And those terms, when they're uttered, it is not for me to judge or AJ to judge or Scott to judge or Eric to judge on whether they are offensive or not. They are offensive to the people that are getting affected by them. And that's who counts here. So I thought that the Red Sox reaction was good. Duran's reaction was good. And as Alex Cora said, and this was encouraging too, in my opinion, it's not a case of moving forward. We've got to do better. And the Red Sox know now that they've got some work to do, and it seems to me that they're going to do it.
Yeah, and the other part to keep in mind, I know it's secondary, but the game portion of this is one of their best players. He's going to miss 2 games. He plays pretty much every day. The Red Sox are in a fight for a wild card spot. It hurts. It impacts the ball club for 2 games here.
It does
So
hurt, and
yeah.
it's inexcusable, and it cannot happen. And my friend Sean McAdam from MassLiveSports.com wrote today that, listen, this kind of thing, it's clear what the Red Sox had to do. There could be no equivocating. There could be no, well, we're in a pennant race, maybe we'll just find. No, this had to happen the way it did. And from that perspective, again, just days after the passing of Billy Beane, who was the head of MLB's diversity and inclusion group, it was encouraging to see the way everyone reacted.
Yeah, well said. And Billy Beane is very missed. I know we didn't get to that the other day, but someone that I knew very well at MLB, just a great human being. And I encourage everyone to look up his story. Okay, we'll get back to baseball here. Let's get to another fringe playoff team that's basically fallen out at this point. Wanted to get your thoughts on the Texas Rangers. And if you think, looking back, armchair quarterback, they did the right thing at the trade deadline, and if maybe they'll even let a few players loose that are going to be free agents in the next few weeks.
First things first, Scott, I did think they did the right thing at the deadline. They're the defending World Series champions. They still had a chance, and they had all this pitching coming back. There was reason to believe, if you're the Rangers, that the offense could not be this bad for this long. Well, it turns out that it has continued to be bad, and they just have not gotten it together. They're 3-9 since the deadline, and you raised the question of waiver dumps, kind of like what the Angels did last year. They are in position to do that. They've got some salaries they can trim, and that with other players, with players that other teams would like. I'm thinking of David Robertson and Kirby Yates and maybe Leclerc and certainly Nathan Eovaldi. But if you're the Rangers, do you want to do that? And that really is the big question here. It's a bad look. It was a bad look for Los Angeles Angels last year. It would be a worse look, in my opinion, for the Texas Rangers this year, considering what they were. Would it save them some money? Sure, it would save them some money. It would also send a message to the industry, to players who might eventually join them as free agents, that, hey, we might just cut you loose at some point if we want to save a little bit. So from that perspective, I don't like it. I don't actually like the whole idea of teams that are not playing particularly well, but looking good in the waiver process, because it goes by reverse order of record, getting players that they don't necessarily deserve because other teams are, just trying to save money. So it's kind of a weird deal. I don't know that the Rangers are going to take this course, but they have been very mindful all season, going back to the offseason. Their ownership has been very mindful of saving money, of imposing financial restrictions that maybe they didn't anticipate coming off a World Series title. They've cited, of course, the uncertain future television revenues from their RSN. I get it. But at the same time, you make a lot of money too. I've made this point before. Coming off a World Series title, hosting the All-Star game, the Rangers are doing okay.
Should somebody step in? Obviously, this is going to be something that will be in the CBA because Major League Baseball won't impose something on themselves without any kind of injunction from the players. Is this something that needs to be addressed before the next CBA?
Perhaps, yes. And Eric, Buster Olney from ESPN wrote at the end of last season, or maybe in the off season, that MLB looked at this, considered it, but decided not to do anything just yet. And that was appropriate. It had happened once, and it was a weird circumstance. Remember, the Angels loaded up, and then they wanted to get under the luxury tax threshold when they were no longer competing. So they went about this route. I don't know that other teams are going to do it the way the Angels did it, en masse, so to speak. So if it happens again, if you see it happening a lot this August, then maybe MLB will decide outside of the CBA, just on its own, that we can't have this and we don't want this going on any further. And then they would impose some kind of rule change.
Have you ever heard of a case like what Eflin said about Kyle Snyder? Did I say it right? Yeah, Kyle Snyder. I was thinking I said the wrong Snyder.
Zach Eflin.
Yeah, Zach Eflin and Kyle Snyder calling the Orioles. Have you ever heard of not only just in the division, but another team? And I can vouch for Kyle Snyder. This dude really, really cares about his pitchers, more so than most pitching coaches I've ever worked with. So I'm not surprised. But have you ever heard this?
I have not heard it, but my assumption now is that it goes on. And what you're referring to, Eric, is something I wrote about today. When Zach Eflin was traded from the Rays to the Orioles, and actually when Phil Maton was traded from the Rays to the Mets, in both cases, the Rays kind of assisted in the transition. With Eflin, they had a communication between Kyle Snyder and the Mets people. Basically, Kyle Snyder related what Eflin's throwing schedule was, his grips, his sequencing, everything, you name it. Now, Kyle Snyder told me that he consulted with the Rays before doing that. This was an in-division trade. And the Rays' feeling is that Eflin signed with them as a free agent, as did Maton, and they feel somewhat of an obligation that you just don't cut loose these guys and forget them forever once a trade is made. Obviously, yes, it's kind of a fine line, right? You don't want to give the opposition too much, but the Rays felt, and appropriately, I think, that this was the right thing to do. It was right by the player, and it really caused no harm. Now, Eflin did pitch brilliantly against the Rays last weekend, but when I asked somebody with the Rays about that, not Kyle Snyder, he said, that's Zach Eflin. That's his responsibility. He did it. So I thought it was cool, and I had the same thought, Eric. I wonder how many other teams do this because I had never heard it before, and it was something that was sensitive. When Eflin told me this, the next day he said, hey, you know what? I'm not so sure you could say that on TV or write about that because it might be kind of dicey. I said, no, don't worry. I already checked with Kyle and we talked about it and he explained to me what this was and that he had cleared it with the Rays people. So all good. And again, it's something that I thought spoke well of the Rays and probably is something that most teams would consider doing if they don't do it already.
Ken, I know you're not going to tell us who you're going to vote for this year, but NL Rookie of the Year is getting interesting now. Everyone thought it was Paul Skeens' runaway or Shota Imanaga at the beginning of the year. But there's a guy out in San Diego that's kind of creeped his way into that talk. So if you had a vote, which I don't even know if you do because you won't tell us, would you vote for Skeens, Imanaga, or Jackson Merrill?
First of all, I don't know if I have a vote yet in that category. We have not gotten our assignments. So that's number one. Number two, I would say that we'd have to wait until the end of the season. It's only fair. That's when you judge the entirety of a campaign. But given all of that, AJ, my preference in this case, much as it is for an MVP, is for the position player. And particularly when you see what Merrill has done lately, last night's game-saving catch, all the game-tying and go-ahead home runs, just the clutch play that he has given the Padres, who have surged remarkably in recent weeks. He, to me, is a remarkable story. And if you look at where he was going into spring training, he had played only a little bit above A ball. He had never played center field, and yet he made the opening day roster as a center fielder, has had some ups and downs offensively, but my goodness, he's probably a guy who's going to get some MVP votes now. Now, this is to take nothing away from Skeens, who's been brilliant, but I suspect he's going to be shut down at some point before the season ends. And remember, he didn't arrive with the Pirates until early May. Imanaga has been with the Cubs all season and has been terrific. And there are a lot of other National League rookies as well doing outstanding things. Jackson Churio, Mason Wynn, you can go right down the line. But if you're asking me, if I had to vote today, I would vote for Jackson Merrill.
If you had to vote today, since we're in the voting mood, Ketel Marte, Ohtani, or Bryce Harper?
This one's tough. And Marte is a guy that has been that team's engine for quite some time now. And I haven't looked at the numbers as closely as I looked at NL Rookie of the Year because I wrote about that the other day. But Ohtani is going to get a lot of play, obviously. He's Ohtani, but he's a DH. And when you're looking at the MVP, that's going to come into consideration. The first criteria is strength of offense and defense. Well, he doesn't play defense, at least this season, when he's not pitching. So that could create an opening for a Marte or a Harper. It would probably depend upon what happens down the stretch. I love Marte as an up-the-middle defender for a team that is playing really well and a guy who contributes offensively and means so much to that group. And, of course, Bryce Harper is Bryce Harper. So, again, this remains to be seen how it's all going to play out, but it could be an interesting race.
Yeah, I mean, we can debate it when Ken's off, but I mean, I think there's some other names. Not even they're going to make fun of me for Ellie.
I wouldn't put Harper anywhere in there. I wouldn't put Harper in there.
He's not my top five.
No,
right now.
He's dropped off.
He missed some time. No, I missed some time.
Yeah, no, but he's out for me. I mean, it's really, for me, it's two. It's Shohei or Ketel Marte right now. There's not really, I mean, you can look at, other divisions, but for me, those are the two.
I would agree with that. Right now.
Okay. And then lastly, Ken, I wanted to finish, since you were out last week, I wanted to finish with your thoughts on the updated NL wildcard race specifically, and just how crazy baseball is when people ask us, why you don't take much time off in the summer. Because it's like you disappear for a week, you come back and you're like, wait, the Braves are on the outside looking in, the Giants are back, the Cubs are kind of back. So when you've now come back, I know you're paying attention, but to the work world, writing again for The Athletic and on with us, what have been your thoughts on the NL wild card lately?
Well, it's so true, Scott. It's an everyday sport, and when you take any time off or you're away for a little bit, you fall behind. There's no question about it. Even as much as I'm in the mix and still reading, I'm not on the phone and I'm not doing my normal thing. So yeah, things changed a lot in a week. And the Braves thing is fascinating. And I'm not sure where they're going with this. You can make the case that Max Fried is back now. I know he hasn't pitched really well just yet. They've got Sale, who's pitching extremely well. They've got Ronaldo Lopez coming back. The rotation should be in pretty good shape. Schwellenbach and even Charlie Morton. So given that, maybe there is an impetus for them to make another good run. Problem is, they have not performed offensively this season the way any of us anticipated. And Brian Snitker has said this. They expected some regression. It was only natural after their record-breaking offensive season last year. But this kind of regression, even without Acuna, it's not something that they expected. So I would expect they have one more run in them, and they're not done yet. But an executive with another team made an interesting point to me yesterday, and maybe it was wishful thinking. He said, listen, these guys, they're used to winning the division. They're used to winning 100 games. That's who they've been the last few years. How excited are they going to be to compete for the third wild card? Will they be as hungry as maybe the Giants or the Mets or the Cardinals? It's a good question, but that's a professional clubhouse, and I would think that they are going to be fired up just to get in, thinking that if they get in with their pitching, they can cause damage.
Scott was talking about vacation. I just want everybody to know, just because me and Ken were on vacation at the same time, we were not down the shore together, okay? Ken and I did not rent a house with our families and eat Pound's Donuts down in the Jersey Shore. Just clearing that up for the whole FT family, okay?
I'm sure they were all just...
I would have been cool with that, Eric. I've spent many times down at the Jersey Shore, and it's always a blast.
Kenny's a big boardwalk guy. I know that.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Ken was at an undisclosed location.
Yeah,
AJ.
Undisclosed.
Yeah, undisclosed location, as you hear on Fair Territory. Ken, thank you. We'll see you Thursday on Fair Territory.
Sounds good, guys.
Ken Rosenthal, FT Senior Insider and host of Fair Territory. You heard him on Monday. He's back on Thursday with the show, which is live 12:30 Eastern time. So catch that on the FT YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcast. Type in Fair Territory.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.